पार्लीमेंट हिल ते एक न्यूज़ कॉन्फ्रेंस च एनडीपी आगू जगमीत सिंह ने लिबरल सरकार नूं मानसिक सेहत प्रोग्रामां लई $4.5 बिलियन दा फंड प्रदान करन दे अपने विचार वादे नूं पूरा करन दी अपील कीती। जगमीत सिंह ने कहा कि बहुत सारे कनेडियन अपनी मानसिक सेहत नाल जूझ रहे ने ते रहन सहन दी वध रही लागत लोकां दे तनाव नूं वधा रही है।
Today, we are calling on the government to fulfill their promise to deliver $4.5 billion specifically in funding for mental health. With the pandemic, the cost of living, all the pressures on Canadians, we know that more than ever, people need access to mental health. And to put it very clearly, mental health is health. And for too long, it's not been treated that way. People have incredibly long wait times if they're trying to get access to mental health services. It's extremely costly, difficult to access, and people end up suffering, and many suffer in silence. So today we're calling on the government to do a number of things. First and foremost is to deliver that funding that was promised. We want to see that happen. We want to see the investment in $4.5 billion over 5 years specifically for mental health. We want to see GST removed from mental health services. This is a concrete measure that will happen, that can happen immediately, that will have an immediate savings for people trying to access mental health services. It will lower costs, and it also sends a really important message. We remove GST from items, from services we consider essential. Mental health services should be considered essential in that same way. And finally, we want to make sure that it is easier to access mental health services, and the federal government can play a very powerful role in doing that. There is a motion that Gord Johns has presented. It's motion 67, and that's calling for parity to acknowledge that mental health should be treated just as important as or overall physical health. So that's a motion that Gord Johns has before Parliament. And that's something that we're pushing. But we're specifically today calling on the government during this week where we're reflecting on the importance of mental health and the impact of mental illness. We're calling on this government to stop delaying with their promise to deliver $4.5 billion for mental health services. We want to see that happen. That is a transfer of funds that will make a big difference in people's lives to be able to access mental health. That's our call, that's our demand. And we're using the awareness that's being generated this week as a time to say, you've waited this long, there's no reason for that delay. Let's see that investment made, and we're calling for that today. And in addition, we're calling for an additional ask, which is, let's also remove the GST off of these services. That's an immediate support, takes some of the cost away, and it makes it easier to access. It also sends a clear message. We believe these are essential services. And that's something important that shows people we recognize the importance of mental health and accessing services. So these are our two fundamental, our two clear asks that we're putting forward today. And maybe Gord can talk a bit about the motion that he's presented.